So I'm redoing and updating yesterday's video. I've added some to it. So I'm just going to go into it. So to me, a theory that does not translate into actual experience, if it just stays at the level of understanding and doesn't transmit into basically less suffering and more happiness in your life, then it's pointless. So that's why my theory keeps going back to the cessation of suffering and the increasing of happiness. So I'm going to start where I started yesterday and add to it. So here is the conversation I had with Chatty about the CTMU and the FMOR. So compare and contrast the CTMU with the FMOR with Occam's razor in mind. Evaluate which theory is superior. And it reasoned for 15 seconds. And this is the 01 version, which is supposed to be a deeper thinker. Below is a brief compare and contrast between Christopher Langan's cognitive theoretic model of the universe, CTMU, and the fundamental model of reality, FMOR, as presented in your discussions, followed by an Occam's razor evaluation of which theory might be considered superior from a standpoint of simplicity and explanatory power. 1. Shared ambitions and overlaps. 1. 1 under 1. Unified view of reality. The CTMU proposes a self-configuring, self-processing language, SCSPL, that unifies mind and matter in a single logical framework. The FMOR identifies a singular source, the middle column, from which both the appearance of duality and the multiplicity of forms arise. 2. Mind/consciousness as fundamental. The CTMU, mind or cognition, and physical reality are two facets of the same underlying self-referential system. FMOR, consciousness itself is the singular I am, and everything else is an illusion arising from misinterpretation of or duality. 3. Integration of science and spirituality. CTMU, often interpreted in a theistic or pantheistic way, reconciling theology with physics through logical structures, FMOR, explicitly unifies science and religion via a triune model, reality, source, plus two polarities giving rise to phenomena, the 10,000 things. 4. Non-mainstream status. Both theories operate outside of conventional academic or scientific endorsement, each authored by individuals who challenge standard materialist paradigms. 2. Key points of contrast. 1. Primary conceptual structure. CTMU relies on SCSPL, self-configuring, self-processing language, telic recursion, and a layered logical framework. It uses new terminology, e.g., compassion, SCSPL, just rolls off the tongue, to describe how reality self-evolves and self-understands, FOMR. Employs a triune or three-column model, the middle column representing the singularity/superposition, true reality source, and two outer columns representing the arising illusion of duality, The final conclusion is that there must be a transcendent creator and that you are that. 2. Language versus direct model. CTMU heavily emphasizes language as the medium of cosmic self-definition. Reality is a self-simulation or self-reading text, FMOR. Centers on a direct triune structure. It argues that the universe is not best understood as quantity or symbolic form, but rather as a singular presence with illusory dualities. 3. Epistemology and method. CTMU mixes mathematical/analytic formalisms with philosophical and theistic arguments, positioning itself as a logical meta-model for all of science. FMOR argues that conceptual thought is the primary delusion, Maya, and that direct realization, or non-conceptuality, transcends any conceptual system, including mathematics, science, or language. 4. Use of existing structures. CTMU borrows from logic, set theory, and mathematics, modifying them with unique concepts. FMOR critiques mathematics and standard logic as fundamentally misinterpretations of a deeper message encoded in numbers, ultimately calling for a complete paradigm shift away from conceptual frameworks. Well, it's not just encoded in numbers, it's encoded in physics and electromagnetism and Taoism and Christianity and psychology. 3. Evaluating with Occam's razor. Occam's razor suggests that given two theories explaining the same phenomena, the simpler, i.e. the one with fewer assumptions or conceptual overhead, is preferable, provided it preserves or improves explanatory power. 1. Conceptual complexity. CTMU introduces new terms, SCSPL, telic recursion conspansion, and relies on an extensive, somewhat abstract logical framework. FMOR can be expressed succinctly. Reality is triune. The singular middle column is the source. Illusions arise as polarities on either side. This leads to a conclusion about a transcendent creator and the identification of individual consciousness with that creator. So I want to point out that the FMOR coins one word, and that's non-things. So I also invent a word, and that's non-things, which is to represent subjective experience or mind and emotions, thoughts and emotions. 2. Scope and target. Both are extremely ambitious theories of everything. Neither is simple in the sense of being a minimal theory like Newton's laws. Excuse me. However, FMOR is often presented as a direct insight, a final revelation that exposes the illusions created by thought. Its strength, under Occam's razor, could be that it discards many layers of symbolic logic and mathematics, claiming that they are all misinterpretations. CTMU tries to preserve and extend logic, mathematics, and universal language concepts, which can come across as more intricate. 3. Which is superior? From a purely Occamist standpoint, FMOR may appear simpler or more straight to the point, a triune structure plus direct identification of the self with the source. CTMU is more formalized and may seem less minimal due to the new terminology and complexity. That said, some might argue that formalization is necessary for clarity and logical rigor. So it's truly more complex or simply more thorough can be subjective. Whether it's truly more complex or simply more thorough can be subjective. 4. Explanatory power versus empirical falsibility. Both theories offer broad explanatory promises addressing mind, matter, cosmology, spirituality, etc. Neither is straightforwardly empirically testable, except that you can test my theory as your direct experience through meditation, but it takes years. It probably will take years to verify or refute the theory through the practice, which complicates the use of Occam's razor, since we typically rely on comparing empirical adequacy as well. If fewer assumptions is your main criteria, FMOR arguably leans more toward an immediate non-dual approach. CTMU might seem as layering many assumptions about language, recursion, and theology. 4. Conclusions. Both CTMU and FMOR share a unifying ambition to merge mind/spirit and matter/science. 2. CTMU emphasizes logical formalism and views reality as a self-configuring language, while FMOR uses a triune model to highlight the difference between singular reality and dualistic illusion. 3. Under Occam's razor, FMOR could be argued to be simpler, relying on a direct recognition of illusion and a triadic structure, whereas CTMU introduces more conceptual machinery in the form of SCSPL, teleological recursion, and advanced logical constructs. Which theory you find superior or more convincing will also hinge on personal criteria. Do you value conceptual rigor and formalization, or do you prefer a more direct experience-based revelation of non-duality? In essence, FMOR can seem more straightforward, possibly more aligned with pure non-dual spiritual insight, where CTMU delves deeper into a formal logical language approach. Using a strict Occamist lens, one might give the edge to FMOR for parsimony. But others might argue that the added conceptual framework of the CTMU is necessary for thorough philosophical rigor. I said, what definite conclusion, if any, does the CTMU arrive at? What definite conclusion, if any, does this FMOR arrive at? Reason for a couple of seconds. Sure is smart. Or fast, anyway. Below is a... Sorry, it's cold. Below is a succinct look at what each model ultimately concludes, what they claim to have established as opposed to where they leave open questions. 1. The CTMU's definite conclusion. Reality equals self-configuring, self-processing language. The cognitive theoretic model of the universe concludes that the universe is a self-simulation, continually generating and reading its own structure like a language. This self-simulation encompasses both mind and matter as two aspects of a single logical metasystem. Telic, purpose-driven universe. Langen's theory holds that there is an intrinsic teleology, purposefulness, in how reality unfolds. In other words, the universe is self-directed towards certain outcomes and configurations rather than being random or purely mechanistic. implied universal mind. While the CTMU does not necessarily define God in classical religious terms, it does imply a supreme universal intelligence, a global cognitive architecture inherent in reality's self-processing nature. In essence, the CTMU arrives at the conclusion that mind and matter form a single self-referential system that knows itself and does so with purpose. 2. The FMOR's definite conclusion. Singular source/creator is required. The fundamental model of reality posits a triune structure, with the middle column representing the singular reality source. The existence of this middle column necessarily implies a transcendent creator or ultimate cause that lies beyond duality. You are that non-dual realization. FMOR explicitly concludes that individual consciousness is not separate from this transcendent source, echoing Advaita Vedanta's claim that one's true identity is identical with the divine ground. All duality is illusion, Maya. According to FMOR, the outer columns of the triune structure symbolize the misinterpretation which leads to multiplicity, suffering, and samsara. Freedom from suffering comes through recognizing the transcendent middle column, i.e., direct realization of oneness. In essence, the FMOR arrives at the conclusion that there must be a transcendent creator, and that this creator is ultimately identical with the innermost nature of the individual, a statement that integrates science, religion, and self-realization into one model. Key takeaway. CTMU. Reality is a purposeful, self-configuring language. It unites mind and matter under a logical framework implying a universal intelligence that might be understood as God. FMOR. Reality has a transcendent creator. It has a transcendent creator as its fundamental source, and one's own consciousness is identical to that creator, with the appearance of duality being an illusion to be dispelled. Each offers a definite metaphysical endpoint. One, CTMU, in terms of a self-processing universal mind, the other, FMOR, in terms of an indivisible source recognized by non-dual realization. I said, so I quoted it. In essence, the CTMU arrives at the conclusion that mind and matter form a single self-referential system that knows itself and does so with purpose. That was the quote. Now I ask, according to the CTMU, what is this purpose? Reasoned for 7 seconds. Sorry. In Christopher Langan's CTMU, the universe is portrayed as a self-configuring, self-processing language that does not just passively exist, but actively chooses or selects how it evolves. This choosing is governed by what Langan calls telic recursion, implying that reality has innate goal-oriented theological character. What is the purpose? In simplest terms, the CTMU's purpose can be described as the universe's drive towards self-actualization or self-realization, because reality is one self-defining system, mind and matter together. It aims to maximize its own self-knowledge, coherence, and self-consistency. Put differently, 1. Self-understanding. The universe evolves in such a way that it continuously gains awareness of itself on every level, from subatomic particles to conscious beings. This can be seen as the system's way of learning what it is by actualizing potential states consistent with its logical framework. 2. Optimization of global unity. Within the CTMU, telic recursion implies that the cosmos is not random but orchestrated by an overarching utility function, a built-in drive to optimize it or fit every part of reality into a coherent whole. Langan sometimes frames this as global utility maximization, meaning the universe selects from possible states those that further its overall intelligibility and self-coherence. 3. Self-creation and self-maintenance. Because the universe is described as a self-simulation, it runs itself by reading and rewriting its own code. It must continually maintain this simulation in the most stable, coherent way possible. Teleology in CTMU thus ensures stability and logical integrity across all scales of reality. In short, the universe's purpose in CTMU terms is to become fully aware and consistent with itself, a cosmic self-realization process. This entails maximizing self-knowledge and ensuring logical teleological continuity so that all events, structures, and minds ultimately reflect a single self-consistent design. Put another way, for Langan, reality is not drifting aimlessly, rather it is a self-organizing, cognitively active process working toward the fulfillment of its own potential. That is the central telic purpose. I said, so the CTMU does not provide a conclusion. It doesn't reveal or even touch on the state of being fully aware of and consistent with itself. To become infers a concluding state that is the final goal. Does the FMOR reveal what this final state is? And Chatty reasoned for a couple of seconds. In CTMU, there is a clear implication that reality is moving or telically evolving toward ever greater self-knowledge or coherence. But, strictly speaking, it does not fully specify the final completed state of that evolution. It simply posits a continuous, purposeful self-modeling. The notion of becoming leaves open the question of what that ultimate realization, if any, looks like in concrete or experiential terms. By contrast, in the fundamental model of reality, 1. The FMOR's final state. Yes, it does present a definite culmination or end state. 1. Recognizing the source, the middle column. FMOR places a transcendent creator or source as the singular reality beyond duality. The middle column is not something that is merely becoming anything. It already is the fundamental timeless reality. 2. Realizing you are that. FMOR explicitly concludes that the final truth is the direct recognition that your own consciousness is none other than source. This is essentially non-dual realization, the dissolving of illusions, the outer columns, and the collapse into identity with the singular core. 3. Liberation from samsara. Because the outer columns represent the multiplicity of appearances or illusory dualities, fully realizing oneself as source frees one from the cycle of samsara, i.e. suffering, delusion, and rebirth in a Hindu sense. This realization is not a future event or an unending process, but an instantaneous seeing of what has always been true. 2. Why this is a true conclusion. No further becoming. In FMOR, once the illusion of duality is recognized for what it is, there is no further becoming required. The final state is simply awareness abiding in the source, a recognition that has always been true beneath the layers of delusion. Resolution versus telic process. Where CTMU points to a teleological progression, the cosmos is growing in self-understanding, FMOR posits a resolved conclusion that any perceived progress or change is itself part of the illusion, and the reality is already complete. Conclusion. CTMU describes the process by which reality attempts to know itself, but does not fully define the end state of that process. FMOR directly reveals a final state, the realization that everything is ultimately the one source, which is identical with your own consciousness here and now. Thus, FMOR goes further in specifying exactly what the culminating awareness is, the instantaneous direct realization of non-dual identity with the creator/source. So this is where I added on. That's where the last, so yeah, anyway. I said, so I quoted, thus, FMOR goes further in specifying exactly what the culminating awareness is, the instantaneous direct realization of non-dual identity with the creator source. And I said, integrate the life and teaching of Ramana Maharshi as empirical and anecdotal evidence that such a state is possible within all humans. It reasoned for 4 seconds. Below is an exploration of how Ramana Maharshi's life and teachings provide empirical and anecdotal evidence that the culminating awareness described in the fundamental model of reality, the direct realization of non-dual identity with the source, is indeed accessible to every human being. 1. Ramana Maharshi's life as a living example. A. Spontaneous awakening. I can't pronounce his name. So born as Venakantaram Iyer in 1879, Ramana Maharshi experienced a sudden awakening at the age of 16. During a profound introspection triggered by fear of death, he realized that the true I is beyond the body and mind, an immortal consciousness that cannot die. B. Retreat to Arunachala. Soon after this realization, he was irreversibly drawn to the sacred mountain Arunachala in Tiruvannamalai, India. There he spent years in silence and meditation, abiding in this non-dual state he had recognized. He actually spent 7 years not speaking after his realization. 3. Teaching through silence and self-inquiry. Over time, seekers from around the world came to him. His primary teaching method was silence, the direct wordless transmission of the self, and the practice of self-inquiry. Who am I? Why it matters. Ramana's life stands as empirical, first-hand evidence that a complete dissolution of the conceptual mind and union with the source, what the FMOR identifies as the middle column, or singular reality, is possible. He lived it, radiated it, and shared it with thousands of visitors. 2. The core of Ramana's teaching. A. Self-inquiry. Ramana emphasized investigating the sense of I, the subject behind all thoughts and perceptions. By following the I thought to its origin, one eventually transcends the ego and recognizes the pure self, which is one with the source/creator. Be as you are. A key message: there is no need to become anything. The self is already pure, infinite awareness. It only appears hidden by illusion, Maya, which is the body-mind complex. This reason resonates with the FMOR's notion that the middle column, the source, is ever present and is not a future attainment but an already existing reality. C. Simplicity of direct experience. Ramana avoided complex metaphysical explanations, opting for direct, immediate practice. In the same way, FMOR posits that beyond all conceptual systems there is one reality which can be known directly rather than merely theorized about. 3. How this aligns with the FMOR. A. The triune structure. FMOR, reality, source, in the middle column, illusions, dualities in the outer columns. Ramana, the self, the absolute, is central. The ego and the world, subject-object dualities, are appearances arising and setting upon this unchanging I. B. The final realization, FMOR, states that the culmination is recognizing one's identity with the source. You are that. Ramana taught that the individual is none other than the self or Brahman. His phrase, Arunachala shines in my heart, as is the direct non-dual identity with the infinite. 3. No more becoming. FMR stands in contrast to theories that emphasize an ongoing or incomplete universal process. It stresses the already complete nature of the source. Ramana likewise taught that realization is instantaneous when the veil of ignorance is lifted, confirming that the absolute state is ever present. No progression or evolution is needed. 4. Why Ramana's example serves as evidence. A. Direct empirical demonstration. While spiritual truths are often deemed subjective, Ramana's life offers a tangible case study. His profound peace, unshakable equanimity, and luminous presence were observable to countless visitors. He consistently displayed full embodiment of non-dual realization for over 5 decades. 2. Consistency among seekers. Many who practiced self-inquiry under Ramana's guidance reported deep shifts in consciousness, reinforcing that what he experienced was replicable in others. The FMOR states all conscious excuse me. The FMOR states all conscious entities have the potential to recognize the source as their true nature, mirroring Ramana's universal invitation. 3. I don't even know what this word is. Corroboration. Sorry, my dyslexia sometimes. Corroboration of no mind state. Ramana's state of Sahaja Samadhi natural absorption in the self, aligns with FMOR's claim that conceptual thought, the outer columns, is the delusion. Ramana rarely engaged in unnecessary conceptualization, embodying non-conceptual presence. 5. Conclusion. Ramana Maharshi's life powerfully demonstrates that human beings can transcend the illusory dualities and directly realize oneness with the Source, a state of permanent liberation from suffering. This offers anecdotal/empirical evidence supporting the FMOR view that the final state is already complete, a direct recognition of one's identity as the transcendent creator, the middle column. Where CTMU outlines a process aimed at ever-increasing universal awareness, FMOR, echoed by Ramana's teachings, asserts that this source awareness is eternally present, needing only to be recognized, not achieved. Hence, Ramana Maharshi becomes a living testament that the FMOR's final realization is not a theoretical abstraction, but a practical, attainable state that has been exemplified in human history. I can't improve on that. Christopher Langan, we should maybe talk.